Welcome everyone to the So Much Cosplay show here on The Experience. I am your host, sewing teacher, cosplayer, and Loki wannabe variant, Cheryl's Laboda Whited. I hope you are all doing fantastic this Friday evening, and I'm very excited to work on the final stages of this Loki Sylvie cosplay cloak that we're working on. Capelet, cloak, whatever you want to call it. Now, over here on this set, you can see that I have a different cloak than the one that we've been working on, but this one I made for Game of Thrones. And this particular cape is actually made from this same pattern that we have been using up until now. So there's a couple of things that we're going to be doing. We're going to be reusing the under cape, that the long cape, and this has some really kind of amazing fur that it is made from, very soft but also very heavy. But we don't want this top part. We actually want to replace that with our Loki capelet that we have been making over the past few episodes. So we in order for us to reuse this capelet, there is a couple of snaps that we need to continue to sew on to this cape in order to make this fur capelet the one that we want from Loki, with our amazing and beautiful lining that we have lined it with. So I'm going to just show you really quickly how this is attached. And there are two just regular snaps on this cape, and I'm going to take it off here. There's three snaps technically. There's one right in the center back. So everything on this particular cape stays on nice and drapey. Let's fix our little mannequin here. We don't want her to go naked. Okay, so on this cape, you can see that there are some metal snaps, and I have attached little snap pieces to the lining here, and then also here onto the cloak. But what we need to do is to attach these same snaps to our Loki cloak capelet so that it attaches to this base version. And so that is what we are going to do today. Also, we have the wig for the Loki capelet or Loki outfit. And let me tell you, this is how it came in the mail. It is far too long for what we need to do with our version of Sylvie, and so we are going to need to do some trimming to this, and I will show you how we're going to be styling this wig. So I say we get started with our capelet, and let's get this all set up so that we can get you seeing how we're getting this finished. Now, here's our beautiful cape, and here is the interior, and this corner here and this center back, this where we get the center back is the seam. Now, for you to see that in the lining of the other fur, you can see, and you can see I've used this with lots of Game of Thrones stuff. And you have these, what we're calling the male ends of the snaps, which means all of the female ends of the snaps are in the large cloak. So that makes this nice and easy for us to put all of this together. So what we're gonna do is, and I'm just gonna move this fur capelet off of my lap because I don't know if what the weather is by you, but here it's really, really warm. Okay, so I have these snaps that are the correct size. And what I need to do is to just snap these from the card that you buy them from. And you want to make sure that your snap ends completely fit the project that you're trying to put them on. So we just need to take 3 of these off of here. And because we're only going to be using 3, and remember, we're only going to be using the male ends. And so we only want this version, not the other version. And I'm just going to test it real quick on our other side, and it looks like we are good to go. Okay, so we are going to sew this center male end and the 2 corners. And this should be a fairly quick process to get these on. And what we're going to make sure that we're doing is only sewing through the lining. We don't want to sew all the way through to the fur. We don't want to end up sewing through that fur. And so we're going to be just sewing through the lining. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about, just in general, like how we wanted this cape to look. We know for a fact that it is not going to be exactly like the show. We're okay with that. We're doing our own version here of Sylvie. Some of you have known that Sylvie, or a version of the female Loki, was in the comics. And so we can draw from some of that, but we can also draw from a lot of fan art of what we're going to do as well. So we're just tying a little tiny knot in our thread. And what we're going to do is we're just going to come up under the needle is just going to come up under these little, I don't know what you want to call these, but they're like little holes. And we're just going to take a few stitches through each of these holes. And once you have like 3 or 4 stitches down, you're actually going to go under the fabric and come up through the next hole. So we don't want the thread to be on top of the button or the snap. We want it to come up from underneath. And we're actually going to need to make several passes through each one of these. And the reason for that is because we need this to be secure across all of the edges of this rather giant snap. And the reason we want all of those edges to be sewn down really well with multiple stitches on each is because as this is pulled and attached to the other garment, this is going to be a stress area for this piece of fabric. And so we want to make sure that this is secure on all sides. Any of the sides that don't get the same amount of stitching are going to be considered a weaker point in this garment. And so I'm trying to do like 4 to 5 stitches in each one of these little holes. And I'm trying to make sure that I keep my snap centered on that center seam, which you can see here. So there's that center seam. I know that's hard to see in the shininess of this fabric, but right there is the center seam, and we want to keep that in the right spot. So we're just going to come under the lining fabric, and we'll make sure that we're not going all the way through to the other side of the fur. And we're just 1, 2. We're going to do about 4 or 5. I've been doing 4 each piece here. And we don't want to catch the fabric up. We don't want it to buckle under here. We don't want to create any like pleats or bubbles. So we're just making sure that we're going and just getting that fabric under there gently and trying not to make any pleats or bubbles underneath this fabric. So we've got 1, 2. This is the second one. Here's the third one. So you're just trying to, secure this on all edges, and you want to make sure that your thread is very strong. Don't use, your weak thread that's been baking in the hot sun in your front window. I tell all of my students that when you store your threads, you want to make sure that you store your threads away from sunlight. Because if your thread is in direct sunlight, it's actually going to be much weaker, and it will actually degrade the fabric or the thread. That thread will be pretty unusable. I've seen some people bring beautiful matching threads to a class with me, and then the next thing you know, that thread is broken and breaking all the time and causing all kinds of problems. And it's because that thread is old and it's been in the window. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to fold back some of this fabric here, and we're going to tuck our knot like right under this edge. And we're just going to knot this a couple of times to make a nice big knot here. We don't want it to be seen on the outside of our fabric. And then sometimes I just take a couple of extra stitches. Those extra stitches just keep this knot from popping out. And if you've ever had a knot, pop through the fabric and then it's it's basically like unraveling itself underneath there. That's what we're trying to avoid. Okay, so we've got this beautiful secure. If we really tug on that, see how it's not affecting our fabric at all. It's just going it's behaving itself right there. Okay, so our next one is going to be right here along this front edge, and this is the point at which it wraps around the neck. And so our next piece should be right here, and we're going to just place it right there. Now we don't want the lining to pop out here, so we're going to move this just a slight hair down, and we're going to need a new piece of thread because this piece of thread here is certainly not long enough to do everything that we need. So we're going to get a new piece of thread. Here we go. I'm using a 50 weight thread. I know that some people don't realize that threads have multiple weights or thicknesses. And so this is very much like the idea of wire. And so the higher the gauge wire, the thinner the wire is. And so it is with thread. Thread has thicknesses or weights, as it's called. And the thread weight matters. You wouldn't want to use super delicate threads on things like this where they're going to get a lot of pushing and pulling. And so we want to make sure that the pushing and pulling, oh, that's the actual wrong side. We need the other piece. Where did I put him? It's on this table somewhere. There they are. They were tucked in here. There we go. All right. So now we have our next piece, which is going to go right here. And once again, we're tucking this under the right under the fabric. We're going to start that knot on the side of this. So yeah, thread has weights, and the higher the thread weight, the thinner the thread is. So for those of you that are familiar with wire, you know that like a 28 gauge wire is a thinner gauge than a 12 gauge wire. And so when you are thinking of threads, you need to be thinking along the same lines as the wires. And a 30 weight thread is finer than a 12 weight, and an 80 weight thread is like whisper thin. And so if you start sewing with a 80 weight thread on something like this that needs to have a lot of tension on it, you probably aren't going to have very successful projects. So you really do want to match the thread weight to your project. And I normally sew with a 50 or a 40 weight. Those are my two favorites. They pretty much do the job for pretty much everything. The finer thread, the 50 weight, is great for just general sewing. And the 40 weight is great for top stitching and decorative motifs that need to be seen. So yes, there are other weights, and yes, you can play with them. But if you're a beginner and you are like, what kind of threads should I have in my collection? Usually 40 weight or 50 weights are going to be perfect. So that will get you started. And if you're wondering, like, what is the word spelled out here on these snaps? It's the name of the company that makes them, which is Prim Consumer Products, PRYM. And they are the company that owns Dritz, which makes almost all of the notions that you can find commercially. So if you see a commercial sewing notion at your Joann's, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, etc., even Walmart, they're probably going to be this company here, Dritz. And they basically own everything as far as notions are concerned. So you can see here, Prim Dritz Corporation. They're out of South Carolina, and they have been doing these notions, oh gosh, for like 100 years. But most of us know that company as Dritz with the little sewing tomato logo. They are really awesome folks to deal with if you have any issues or questions, things like that. But they have been really working hard to break into the cosplay market. They really have done a lot of changes to the colors that are available for things like snaps, rivets, grommets. They understand that we want different colors other than silver and gold. And so they have been really instrumental in working on what cosplayers would want, which are some darker finishes like gunmetal and high finish chromes, and even things like rose gold and so on. More of a brass color, an antiqued brass color versus a plain gold. They really have listened to some of what we have been asking for from them, and that I think is always a good thing. So we're just going to come right under here and tuck under right there. And I'm going to go ahead and make that knot. And we're going to just take a couple of stitches in here. That will help secure this. Oops. Now this happens all the time when your thread gets a little snarl in it, or a little thread, some people call them thread boogers. Sometimes you can get them out, sometimes you can't, and sometimes you can pull on them and you'll break the thread just like that. But we were just trying to add some additional stitches there for strength anyway, so we do not need to worry about that. So we're just going to trim that thread, and we're going to move on to our last one. So there's our first two. And we have one more left to do. Now, I looked high and low today in my entire sewing stash. I thought for sure that I had a really nice closure. I couldn't find it though. I looked everywhere. I thought for sure that I had it. And, you know, it's one of those things when you are storing all of your supplies, it is super important to, when you get new supplies, to put them in their proper containers. I was not very good about that when I first learned to sew. I did not put my tools in their proper place. I kind of just lumped all my notions into the same area, and that really became problematic because now as I'm going back to try to find things, I have those earlier containers and then my new containers, so it just really gets a little bit difficult to find all of that stuff. So don't be like me and put all of your stuff into just generic containers. And if you some people separate things by project, which is awesome. I am not the person who structures things by project. I have to have like the bin of supplies, and that bin has to you know, that's where I need to put that item. So for example, this cloak closure that I'm looking for, which again, I know I have one. It just stinks that I can't find it. And I just need to keep looking for it. But if it was in the buttons and closures bin that I have made for myself, then it would be in the right place. And right now it is not. And it is super frustrating to know that you have supplies and not wanting to go out and buy another one. I mean, those of you that are comic book collectors, you know how frustrating it is that if you do not put your comics into your collection in the proper way, you could fool yourself and say, oh my gosh, I'm missing a book, and you go out to get it only to find later that you've had that book all along. So trust me, it's kind of the same idea. And I have done that lots of times. So, you know, organization is super key. And this was one of the times where I am frustrated with myself for not being as organized as I should be, because I have been looking for this cloak closure everywhere. Now, it's not that I don't think that this cloak will close properly the way it needs to, because it actually has a pretty ingenious closure to begin with. But what I want is something decorative on the front that basically hides the fact that this is being closed with some snaps, right? Because obviously, you know, no one wants to see the snaps part. They want to see the pretty closures and the pretty I call it like jewelry, right? And that's essentially what this cloak closure would be. It would sit right here on the outside and not be this, you know, functional thing that's on the inside. So that is definitely something that I have been looking for in my studio. I have a giant studio. I don't know where I put it, but it is out there, in there somewhere. And we're just about finished with this last closure. So I'm very excited about this coming together. And, you know, I want to talk to you also about one additional type of closure that you could have used if you did not have the undercloak that you wanted to make for this capelet. Now, I already had the undercloak from what, you know, as I was explaining, from my Game of Thrones costume. So I did not have to make the cloak. But if you did, we'll talk about, or if you didn't want to make that cloak at all, I'll talk about a different closure. So we're just going to, right here on the side, and we want to make sure we don't catch all of that in our fur. And we're taking that little knot right there along the edge of that fabric. And now we're just going to make some loops right through here just to secure the knot. We don't want that knot to pop out. We don't want that to receive a lot of stress. We don't want all of this stitching to come undone. So that's what these additional stitches are for. All right, and we just give that a little trim. There we go, and voila, and that one is now done. And so here are the snaps. All three are finished, and now we can go ahead and put this onto our, ooh, don't lose that thread. We don't want that thread and that needle to get stuck in the fur somewhere. That would be awful. And here are another kind of closure you could have used, again, from Dritz. These are sew on hook and eye closures, but they're not the kind of hook and eye closures you might associate with other kinds of, you know, these are more garment kind. They do have a little bit of a snap feel to them, so they secure together really tightly. If you've ever had like a flat front pair of pants, it may have used this kind of closure on the front. And so what you would do, you can see here, is you would just have the bar on one side and the flap on the other, and your piece would actually fold over itself. So this is another option for an invisible closure. So this closure would not be visible from the outside. It would just be like a hidden closure. Closure I'm looking for is there are two golden sort of like fleur-de-lis type shapes, and they have a little hook between them, so that it's very much like a golden latch. And I think that with all of the gold that we're using and this beautiful green, we would have a nice contrast to this look. So I think that we should put this on the mannequin, and when we come back, we'll actually start to address how we're going to style our wig. So we will be right back after this break.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, And behind every page, there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Okay, everyone, I am so glad to be back. I hope you enjoyed that little break. It looks so good on the mannequin. It looks very much like we are hoping it to. Doesn't it have that like regal look? And of course, that green looks so fantastic. And I just wanted to bring out some additional fabric that I'm excited about using for part of the rest of this costume, and that is this stretch velvet. Now, you're thinking like stretch velvet, like what are you going to make of stretch velvet? I'm actually going to make the corset for this out of this stretch velvet, because what I want to do is two different things. I want to make the Sylvie right from the TV show Loki breastplate and be able to wear that as, you know, as Sylvie. But I also want to be able to wear this as a more traditional version of Loki. And therefore, if I make a green corset, not only is that a piece that I can use for lots of other characters down the road, which I love to be able to mix and match with my cosplay, as I'm doing here, because I have this cloak that's left over from Game of Thrones, and we're just adding to it with these additional pieces. So this will be something that we'll be able to make something out of in the coming shows. And so for those of you that are like mystified by corset making, I do have an episode where we did talk about that before, and I will actually make a corset out of this stretch material. So that's coming up in the future. And now we need to talk about our wig. It is obviously it is too long, and I already know that we need to cut some of this length off. If you see the character on the show, her hair is very short, and we need to have not so much length in order for this to be more screen accurate. This is what is called a non-lace front wig, and so I'm actually going to take the top of this off and the crown that we've made on our previous episodes, and we're going to talk about this wig. So I'm gonna switch on over to our other cam, and we're going to talk about our lovely lady here, Sylvie. So we know that her hair in the show is about shoulder length, which if you look at this wig, would come just to the very bottom base of this this neck piece here. And of course, also in the show, her hair is a little bit curlier, and so we are going to need to make more curl or have more curl in this wig than we do here. And so there's a couple of things we want to do before we start cutting into this wig. Now I will tell you, this wig was $9.99. And it actually acts and behaves like a $9.95 wig. It is cheap, not gonna lie. And it is, well, it's kind of snarled in places because my kid has been playing with it. We've all been wearing the wig around the house a little bit to play. Just for you guys who have never mentioned or never played with a wig, never used a wig, have no idea what a concept, yeah, I'm even talking about in here is, let's talk about the so-called anatomy of this wig. There are wigs that have a lace edging. It's going to be a very fine, almost like nylon material, okay? And that will be right here at the edge, and that's called a lace front wig. A lace front wig would be something that you would actually adhere to your skin at the hairline, and that will help a wig stay on your head and actually look more realistic. This is a non-lace front wig. And so we're just going to talk about some of the anatomy of a wig under here. And as I pull some of this hair to the side, you can see that they're actually sewn in. And you just have like stitching holding these hair follicles to the wig cap. And that's what this part here is called. And you could see the stitching. So if you needed to change anything about this wig, you would need to be very careful about these rows that the hair is stitched in. Because as you start to style it, if you pull it in certain ways, you start to see the fact that this is not human hair and it is in fact a wig. Now, human hair wigs are also sewn together like this. And sometimes the really high-end hair wigs will have individual hairs placed in the wig. And those are pretty expensive, those wigs. You will spend a lot of money on those kinds of wigs. This being a very inexpensive wig, I wanted to make sure that it had these brown black roots, which she does have a little bit of roots, dark roots in the show. And really no one is paying attention to this top part as much because you will have the crown coming to the front here. And so we don't need to have a lace. I don't need to have a lace front wig. I just need to have a more realistic looking wig. Now there are combs inside here. These are tooth combs that will catch your existing hair, or you can put on a wig cap, and that will just be like one of those stockings type looking things, and you would put that over your existing hair, and then you will put on this, and you will try to tuck that into the edges of that wig cap. The other thing is there is a little hook and latch here underneath, and that is to help adjust this wig so that it is rather close and tight to your head. And probably not hooking this correctly, but you get the idea. It is not there. It should snap together like this. And then you will have these straps to help in the back. And sometimes what will happen, especially with the ladies, you will have a lot of the bulk of your hair pinned up, ponytail, whatever, back here in the back. This will help attach under that and keep the wig more secure to your head. So that is what that is for. Now, for us, what we want to do And I'm going to turn on my straightener. And this is a straightener that I use for my own hair. And it gets pretty hot. So we're just going to set this aside for right now while we talk about what it is that we're going to do. This is faux hair. This is polyester plastic hair. This is not real human hair, and you cannot expect it to operate like human hair. And what we need are, as you can see, there's not a lot of curl in this. And if we look at Sylvie from the television show, she has a lot of like wave in her hair. And so that is what we need to create with this. And there's a little knot. We need to create that in the wig, but you have to remember that this is plastic hair. This is not anything that is real. And we have to be very careful about what we do to this wig so that we don't damage this plastic and make it look even more faux. And then we can address how we're going to cut it. So we're going to just put her back on this wig, this headstand, this plastic headstand that I have. And I'm also going to put in a couple of pins. Now there are actual wig stands that you can buy that this hole on the bottom, you can see there's a hole on the bottom here, that will actually go into a clamp that you can clamp to a table, and then this will stay very still. So we don't have that here. We're just going to put the wig on this head. Maybe. And we're going to try to pin this top directly into the foam because we don't want it moving around. Don't pin this to your actual head, obviously. I feel like I need to make that caveat, but we have a couple of sewing pins just to keep this on our stand while we're using it. Now I'm just going to check to see, yeah, we are getting nice and hot with that iron. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to separate out some of this hair. And I have this little comb. And you can very easily straighten hair with the heat of the iron. Like it will straighten really, really well. But what we're doing is we're getting the hair warmed up because again, remember it's plastic. So now you can see like this piece is much straighter than this one here. It is already relaxing the curl. And we don't want to use this on the hair in like, we don't want to clamp this on and like let it burn. So because this is plastic and it will melt. We don't want it to melt on us. So what we're going to do is we're going to clamp and pull down, and we're going to wrap this inside here a couple of times. We're trying to get this all the way around. Okay, and you can see that didn't work really well. So we're going to just brush that back out. But you can see here too where I have the waves of the actual clamp. So we're going to we could do this 2 different ways. And I think we're going to try it this way. We're going to curl this up on my finger. Now we don't have to worry about the ends too much, because the reason we don't need to worry about the ends is because we're going to cut them off. So now we have this curl like this, and we're going to take the iron and we're just going to clamp it and move it and clamp it and move it. Oh, that's not really on the camera, is it? There we go. Clamp it and move it, and it is getting really warm. And so now we just need to hold this curl in place with our hands until it gets back down to about room temperature. And our hands can help dissolve, if you want to call it dissolve, or dissipate the heat for this. And we're just going to let that go, and you can start to see the curl that we need, this waviness that we want from our Sylvie hair. There we go. We've got part 1. Then we just take more sections of this wig. Try to only take small sections of the hair. And most people think like, oh, well, I've got to spray it and I've got to do all this stuff to it. No, 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 no. No, that's not what we need to do. We need to warm up the hair with the iron. And then we need to create the curl. And we're just wrapping that around my finger. Again, don't worry about the bottom. We don't want to worry about the very bottom because we're going to be cutting that off, and we're going to just clamp that curl and clamp it and clamp it. And then we want to hold it together while it is cooling off, because the plastic is what is going to have the memory, and we want that wave to come in from this. Now, I'm not exactly sure, but it could be that she has pin curls, which are a very particular kind of curl. But you can already see that in the front of this wig, we have more curl than we do more wave, which again, if you look at her photos from the show, she has much more of this wave going on in her hair than this straight stuff. Now it's got some body, some curls down here at the bottom, but that's not what we're looking for. We want that to be further up on the head. And in order for us to do that, we need to put that curl in with this hot iron. Another way to do this would be to use bobby pins and to put the hair up like this and bobby pin it to the wig cap. And once you have a curl pinned on like that, you could use a steamer and steam the entire wig. And that will give you very tight curls. I mean, that will give you the kind of tight curls like, you know, like banana ringlets and things like that. We aren't trying to get that kind. We're trying to get these sort of half like waves. We want these like body waves more than we want the other stuff. And so that's why we're using this flat iron, and we're just making these curls and warming them up and getting them and then again, like I said, you're just gonna hold the curl in place while it cools, and that will keep this it will actually start to keep the curls more than not. And that's what's also creating some of this body here. Again, we want that body, we want this sort of waviness to appear throughout the hair. It's just really hard to do, especially if you are not a trained hairdresser or anything like that. Like I am not. And so for me, I feel like, like I must be doing this wrong. I mean, I can curl my own hair just fine, but having curls in this synthetic hair is really can be kind of difficult because you feel like you're doing it on someone else. So we've got some more waves going on here, and again, we can just take the pieces that didn't put the waves in, and we can heat them up and straighten them out. The other thing too is that is how you are going to undo any mistakes. So let's say we didn't like how this came out. We can always come in here and start to heat that hair back up and straighten it out. As long as you are trying to not over melt this hair, you can see we've just taken those curls out. So those are the ways that you're going to be able to style your synthetic wig. And again, this is a very inexpensive wig. We want these like crazy bumpy waves. And remember, we want to put those in because when we get down here to cutting it, that's when we're going to need to have this, all this length needs to come off. Now I'm just going to talk about some cutting tips here, because when we get to cutting this wig, many of us are of the opinion that we're just going to take a pair of scissors and we're just going to cut, chop, chop, chop straight around. And that is not at all what is going to make this wig look natural. If you can already look at how this wig is cut, okay, you can see that there are strands of varying lengths here. That is what makes a wig, a synthetic wig especially, look realistic. If you, and I will just do it because eventually I will cut it off. If I cut this straight across, okay, just straight across, this is going to be so strange looking on this wig. It will look completely unnatural. Look at that, right? Compared to the rest of this wig. So what we need to do with hair, and your hairdressers do this as well, is to snip the hair at angles and in the hair like this, okay, so that you get cuts at varying lengths. So you have long pieces, short pieces. Another way to do this is to use your very sharp scissors as a in a almost like a razor action. And what you're going to do is you're going to keep your scissors and you're just going to move your scissors back and forth while you close them. And that's going to help move these hair pieces in long and short. So you can see that I'm just moving, I'm like cutting, I'm closing the end, but I'm moving it back and forth so that the places that I'm cutting is super random. Okay. And that is going to give you a more realistic look to the end here than us cutting it straight across. Now we still have some pieces here that don't look very natural. So again, we can just come back in and we can cut at that angle and just spread it out and just go in there and make some slices. This is way more realistic than cutting it straight across all the way around the head. You're going to want to texture it piece by piece. And by doing that, you're going to have that more realistic look to the ends. that's very much like these. And you can see how long they have done that here. We don't need to do that as aggressively, as long as all of it is about the same length and we're, cutting sort of on an angle. The more you cut straight across, the less realistic this wig is going to look. So let's just brush that one piece out a little more so that we can see it. And you can already see that it blends in with the piece next to it and all brushed out. It doesn't have that straight, looks like a bowl cut because she does not have a bowl cut in the show. We don't want that to happen here. So this is just going to be how we end up texturizing the hair, adding the waviness that the character has in the show. She has all these sort of curls that come around the head, and then it's cut fairly short, almost to her shoulders. And so for me, that means I would end up probably after I do all my curls, I would probably, from the longest length, let's take the longest piece here. Once all the texture is in, I will probably take 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do this on the camera here. 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 inches off of this wig. And that again is just going to be subjective at your eye. You're going to have to eyeball it. But honestly, again, if you screw up the curls, don't worry. You can always just take your straightener and straighten them back out. If you didn't like how they came out the first time, just go ahead. If this is turned back on, it would be hot again, and we could flatten out all the hair, and then we can put our curls in if we need to. I just think there's so many options, and you don't need to spend a lot on a wig unless you're trying to really, wow your judges and enter contests and things like that. So for this wig, because, she's going to have all of her other accessories on, we don't need to do as much with the wig because all the attention should be on our crown piece. At least I think so. So what do you think, my friends? What do you think about our wig styling, wig choice? I think I've got a lot of work to do here on our wig, and I hope I will be able to finish that by next week, and you'll be able to see the final version. So I hope all of you take care, and see you all next week. Stay tuned, more here on The Experience.